नासिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां हयग्रीवमुपास्महे श्रीरङ्गनाथषटकोपयतीर्थदृष्टं लक्ष्मीनृसिंहषटजित्करुणैकपात्रं श्रीरङ्गवीररघुराक्षटकोपहृद्यं वेदान्तदेशिकयतीन्द्रमहं प्रपद्ये। नमः सभायै. What are Vedas? First question is, when somebody tells you Vedas are great, what are Vedas first? Do we know what it is, what kind of an item it is? So this is a sound pattern aggregated. We call it as Shabda Rashi. Shabda is sound and Rashi is an aggregate. It's a group of sounds, but they have a specific pattern. Not all sound will become Veda. Not all aggregates of sound will be called as Veda. The very first element to be created is Akasha, or either the space. That is the one that comes first. That conducts sound as the first property of those five elements. The first one is Akasha, which is conducting, it is the medium for sound to travel, sound to go from one place to the other. That means, before Akasha is created, the universe would be silent. No one would have a medium to hear each other or even speak to each other. So that is the first of the elements and first of the qualities or the attributes of the basic elements. So naturally, if something is created later, this becomes the cause of that. Sound becomes the cause of later evolutes, whatever evolves. So we say all creation is through sound or Vedas. Vedas happen to be the source of creation simply because before Vedas could be heard or uttered, no activity would be there, no interaction would be there, no one would be able to speak or hear. There could be experience, there is no issue. But exchanging or expressing the experience requires sound. It also requires a medium which can carry that sound. Now, the basic sound, see the distinction we make between Vedic sound and the rest of the sound is that cause or the Karana Shabda is the Vedic sound. After that, it has its own features like syllable, akshara. Let us say you have a consonant, you have a vowel, you have an intonation, a kind of stress or the accent or tone in which you speak, a vowel or a consonant. There are three aspects. In fact, today we have a computing system which can represent these sounds in the form of characters. See, you have heard of Unicode as a standard. But even before Unicode came into picture, we at Government of India, we had a standard equivalent to the American standard, ASCII standard. Equivalent to that, we made ISCI standard, Indian Standard Code for Information Interchange. There, what was additional over and above ASCII was Vedic sounds have certain properties and they are to be included for representation. If today you want to have a database of the Vedic sounds, you would like to, let us say, search something, you want to look for. I am mentioning about the patterns. Now, can somebody study those patterns? Of course, I also have a computer science background, so I could develop this and then we also have the traditional knowledge side by side. How is that put into this? Now the point is, that's why I was checking for the internet. Maybe in our website we could show the Vedic texts are there, not in the sound form, the text form, but they have some special symbols which can represent the three aspects. I call it as CVA, consonant, vowel, accent. This is a basic syllable, a single letter of Vedic sound would necessarily have these three. Of course, in the case of pure vowels, value of consonant will be 0. But still, there is a slot for it, and you will have a basic unit in terms of consonant, vowel, accent. There could be multiple consonants. CCVA, CCCVA, etc. are possible. But V, the count of V is the count of syllables. Number of vowels is the number of syllables. Now, this is important. I'm just going to have, if time permits, yes, I'll try to go through this. Anyway, I just want to mention initial primordial sound from where creation takes place is the Vedic sound, and it is efficacious. I mentioned it has an effect. You pronounce a sound, it's a cause. It can create an effect. A cause will produce an effect. Now, the later elements come up by using these sounds, pronounced the way they are to be pronounced. Now, the elements are created. First is ether or the space. Next comes wind or the air. Third is the tejas, fire or whatever. In general, that which can support form. You can see the form of an item. Till then you cannot see something. Akasha and Vayu cannot be seen. Akasha can be heard, Vayu can be felt. Tejas onwards you can see. Then of course you can taste. Next comes water. After that comes earth, where you can smell something. So the previous attributes will also be there in the later attributes. Akasha has got a single attribute, only sound. Vayu has sound and touch. Next, you will also have sound, touch and form. Sound, touch, form and taste. Then sound, touch, form, taste and smell. Now, the entire structure is hidden in the sound itself, the Vedas itself. So that becomes cause of the universe. Now, if universe exists, cause necessarily exists. See, we say Vedas are eternal simply because if the effects are there, cause must be there. If you see a banyan tree, its root should be there. If the root does not exist, the tree does not exist. Root may not be visible. It should not be. If it becomes visible, probably the tree falls. But then the hidden, unseen support. This is ultimately, Vedas are said to be the root. So, efficacious, specific sound pattern. There are patterns of sounds for consonants, different patterns for vowels, different varieties of patterns for the intonation. There are many subtypes, maybe 20, 30 types across all the four Vedas in different branches of them, etc. Now, for all of them, they also mentioned about the standard. Today, Unicode is trying to catch up with most of those which we had developed in the ISKI. To also see in writing, in the text form, you are able to have some symbol. If you are trained and if you have learned from a guru, then you will notice what this corresponds to. Something like musical notation. You have a song, there is a lyric, but then there is also a notation about the notes. And then if someone is trained, then you would be able to interpret them, use them. First is the syllable. Then of course, aggregates of syllables become words. Words together form a sentence, and sentences together can form a discourse, paragraphs, etc. But the fundamental unit happens to be we call Shabda. Shabda means sound. Shabda also means Veda. Shabda also means one of the instrument of knowledge, like trustworthy person's utterance. That is also called as Shabda Pramana. Krishna, for example, he taught Arjuna. Arjuna had faith in Krishna that what he is saying is true. He knows what he is saying and he also knows what is the fact and he is stating the fact kind of thing. Now that trustworthiness is one of the aspects associated. For example, you are on the street, you want to look for an address. Ask somebody there and then he gives you some direction. You fundamentally believe that this person knows and then he is guiding you properly and you follow that instruction. So, but this at the very beginning level, when the creation starts kind of, then the Vedas are the only sound that were there. and they are all fully authentic. So it is eternal, it exists always, because the effects can come and go, cause cannot go at any given time. So, eternal, universal. You don't need multiple sounds for all the worlds to be created. A single source, single set is sufficient. So this accounts for any number of its progeny or its effects. Cause can be the same, universal, and it should not be atomic. It cannot be atomic, it has to be infinite. If there could be any number of universes, you can have number of universes, number of planets, number of worlds, etc. Still, one thing caters to everything. This is the infinity of the Vedic sound. Of course, this is the source sound or the cause of creation, as I just mentioned. It has a meaning. This is the most important aspect. Why the intonations? Why they set specific patterns? Suppose a person is uttering a word. See, one person's name is Krishna. Now, Krishna has got Ka as a consonant, R as a vowel, again Sha and Na, two consecutive consonants. Then you have A, then you have Visarga. Now, CV, CCV, then of course the consonant, the Visarga is also coming under the category of consonant. Non-vowel. Actually, there is two kind of division Panini did. Vowels, non-vowels. Vowels, consonants could be there. Not a consonant, not a vowel, it is possible. So, the kinds of patterns which decides what. If you utter what will be produced? Now, Saraswati, somebody has an idea, let us say. The god of learning, goddess of learning. Now, when you have a sculpture or when you have a picture, some good sculptor or artist writes, it's pleasant to you. Now it has got its own proper proportions, it is properly presented, it has got serenity, it has got some sanctity and you feel happy about it. Suppose that is distorted, suppose it is too fat or too lean or too ugly, same entity can be distorted if in the sound intonation changes. One example, in English we have the word you. To refer to a person in front of you, you come here, kind of thing we say. Now this you can be used with different accents, different intonations to mean different things. You still means the person in front. That meaning does not change. The word has got a denoted object. That does not change. The emotion can change. You pronounced differently can produce different effects. You only should save me. Let's say somebody is going and requesting, begging somebody, asking for somebody's help or compassion or grace, blessing. Then the you is pronounced in a different way. You come here, you order somebody, this you itself can have an order inbuilt into this. Then it will be pronounced differently. Assuming there is a topper in a class. The class, there is a student who is always topping. In some exam he fails. Now the teacher comes and asks him, you failed? I can understand somebody else failing. Or I can understand you just scraping through. Failing? No, this is unbelievable. But still, the single word can communicate this, can convey this. See, this YOU does not change. The word meaning as the person in front does not change. But the relation, the emotion, the sentiment that is behind, that makes a world of difference. It makes a world of difference. And hence, Vedas are Swara Pradhana, the intonation that carries the intent. And it is not just word, it's denoted object. This means this. You take a dictionary, okay, you take a word, this means this, it gives you a list. It does not end there. That same word, this is where we say it as a meaningful set of sound pattern. Now tell me, if somebody writes this, how many symbols or extra information will have to be put in. Speech is natural. Speech conveys the feeling. If you reduce to writing, use the word when you reduce to writing, you reduce the details of the conversation itself. Now, you cannot find minute variations of the emotions to specifically if you want to mention, okay, this symbol means this symbol means this, etc. You try to make a list of 100 such things. It's not necessary. Whereas in speech, it is inbuilt. A child cries and others generally don't know why is it crying for, but they generally say the mother knows why the child is crying. And it cries in different ways for different situations. Still the mother is able to know. Crying is crying. How can somebody distinguish? Would be one kind of argument, but it still works in the world. See, somebody is cheating, deceiving. He can still use sound in a misleading manner or mimicry, for example. You inside have some feeling, but then outside you show off something. It is possible. So the point is, something that is meaningful and which will not change its meaning would mean you will stick to the way it should be pronounced and not change an iota this side, that side. Why Vedas and not any other sound is a very simple reason. It has to be carried orally. It should have no discontinuity in between. It should have, right from times immemorial, should be continuing through an oral tradition. Only then the emotions are intact. Otherwise, you can have manuscripts, a number of palm leaves, etc. people have written. Still it lacks the nuance in which it was used while speaking. Generally, the Westerners equate language equal to text. Language processing, text processing is different, speech processing is different, image processing is different. I am in computer science, I am seeing different kinds of, I treat them all as pattern recognition issues. But in Indian context, speech equal to language. Language is not text, language is not what is written. What is the implication? There is hardly any illiterate. See, today what the Westerners would like to brand a person as literate or illiterate is one who can read or write is a literate, otherwise is an illiterate. In Indian context, one who can speak is a literate, one who cannot speak is an illiterate. Can you find an illiterate that way? Will speech ever fail? See, you can brand a nation as illiterate is a different thing. That could be commercial. Someone can try to say that, okay, political, you do whatever. They are not knowing English. In fact, I have also said the fine print is one who can read or write is a literate. Fine print is English or something like that. Your chosen language. Only if you can read, write that, you are branded as literate or otherwise. Hardly matters who is somebody to brand anybody else. Who wants anybody else's approval? Are you successful in being able to convey your feeling? Maybe not. We have found people failing utterly in speech recognition or in, let's say, text-to-speech conversion, etc. Why go to text at all? Is the question. Remain at speech, that is the end of it. Arjuna was not sent a letter or a file detailing the 700 slokas of Gita. It could not work. Shishtastheham sadhimam tvam prabannam cannot be written and it will not convey that he is now going down to Krishna. It will not be known at all. Maybe it is not done. So the issue is meaningful, and Vedas have one more important quality. No one created them. No one composed the Vedas. As opposed to, let us say, Kalidasa wrote Raghuvamsha, is possible. Vyasa wrote Mahabharata, Brahma Sutras is fine. Valmiki wrote Ramayana, is all fine. They composed. The independence to choose the sequence of syllables is with an agent, and that agent is the author of that sound. In Vedas, there is no such agent at all. Now, of course, there are many technical, logical discussions. Is it possible to have sound without a speaker? This is the question. It is possible. This is the answer. Panini has answered like this. Panini in his Shiksha, he also wrote grammar, science of grammar he wrote. He also wrote the science of phonetics, in which he says, a living being every moment has an experience. If it chooses to express its experience, then it needs language. Otherwise, without language, it is still possible. Any living being at any moment has an experience, but if it has to be expressed, if it has to be shared, then you need a medium. See, this is one of the reasons. Suppose, okay, before Akasha, Vedas were not heard when we said, did Vedas exist or not? They did, but they were not audible. The question is, something exists but cannot be used. These are two different things. When the big banyan tree that we see is in the stage of the seed, it will not be even seen. It will slowly sprout, it will grow, it will become big, and maybe hundreds of years it occupies acres of land, etc. But still it all began with that seed level that exists, and that is not created. So, authorless, because there is no author, there is no fault at all. This is faultless. These two are concomitant. So long as a person is there, he may be honest, he can authentically say what he feels. He may be dishonest, then he can modify it. He knows something, but then he misleads someone, it is possible. He himself mistakes, and what he has mistaken, he conveys his own possibility. There, he himself does not know right thing. Then ignorance is the fault. If he knows himself but then misleads, then knowledge is the fault. See, knowledge can become a fault also, provided it can be misused. Now, when does this happen? If there is an agency. Why does Vedanta want Vedas to be without an author? What if the Lord Ishvara himself is the author of Vedas? Krishna himself, he has said, Vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyaha. I am the person who is known by all the Vedas, the entire set of Vedas. So, why can't it be his own word? He also has said, I did not create. Veda videva chaham. I know Vedas. He did not say, I created Vedas, I authored Vedas. Simply because a subjectivity should not get in. The moment there is an author, it is possible that at some time towards somebody he may have some intention which is not in tune with the fact. It is possible. Then it is likely to be doubted. Its authenticity can come under suspicion. Now, if you do not have an author at all, but then how will the sound ever come up? How will somebody know, is the question. The Upanishads have a very, very good explanation. We all breathe. We all breathe. Is breathing considered as a text or a composition? Do you write your breathing? Do you count it anywhere in your CV? But do you live without it? Is it not sound? The Upanishads ask for, close both your ears. You will hear some sound. This sound is not created by anybody. But this sound has one important property. It remains constant. It does not undergo artificial variation. Now, Vedas are the breath of Parabrahman. This is what the Upanishads tell us. So it becomes no blemish, no fault in it, and it is self-evident. To bring this into use, you don't need any extra mechanism at all. It is self-evident. If a person is alive, he is breathing. So long as he is breathing, he is alive. There it ends. Now, Vedas are the breath of Parabrahman. So it is not treated as authored by him, but it is always propagated by him. That is okay. He has taught Brahma, he has taught Krishna, he has taught hundreds of people. It is possible. But then he is not the creator. He is not the composer of the sequence of sounds. And self-evident also means it is valid, it is authentic. There is nothing that will change in it. For whoever it is, a person with an evil intention can also use this. Think of maybe Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, or that kind of people. You can do tapasya. You can know Vedas. You can get the powers of the tapasya, etc. But your intention is to use this to suppress others or destroy things, etc. That is another thing. Constructive or destructive, it can still be common. That is what we call it as valid and authentic. It does not depend on who uses this. It does not mean, show me the face, I'll tell you the rule. This is not the kind of, different things apply to different people, it does not happen. Whereas Krishna, as an incarnation has said different things to different people. This is possible. He can guide, he can misguide, he can also re-guide. It is possible. This is at a different level. So, Vedas, when we say they are great, for a very simple reason, it remains universal, it remains authentic, does not undergo changes subjectively. So, this retains its objectivity, is the point. It is valid, authentic. If this has to be maintained, it should be orally transmitted. It cannot be written down and understood. If Rukmini writes a letter to Krishna and then it is read by Krishna, it is different than him hearing her own request. The emotion is part of. I have asked many people in English, these are very, very simple faults, but people simply eulogize. What is your name when somebody writes? The question mark is put in the end. Whereas the interrogative tone remains in the entire sentence. You do not have a tone for every syllable of it. By mistake, okay, or in a manuscript, this one is removed, let us say. The symbol is last. Then it will become an affirmative sentence. My name is what? What is your name? What is the name of the person? That's what it will mean. It will not even convey there is a question in this at all. Whereas in Vedas, not a single unit of syllable, that is vowel, consonant or accent, it cannot be missing. So it is inbuilt. Even if you stop halfway, one can understand so far this much has been said and something is left. This is possible to know. So it is undistorted. Then what does it talk about? It talks about the infinite auspicious qualities of Brahman. Veda itself is called Brahman. They are so identical that the described and the description, the border actually ceases to exist. You will not see the line separating them. So it describes the infinite auspicious attributes. Now, the word, how is it derived? Maybe one can write, no, Veda, per se, the word, how does it come? It's a Sanskrit word. What is the root from which this comes up? Kind of. There are 4 different roots from which the word Veda is defined. According to Panini's grammar, there is a list of verbal roots called Dhatu Pata, in which we have one of the dhatus means existence itself, with the Sattayam. So from that root, Veda is derived. So anything that exists is Veda. First level. Next, anything that knows itself. I know I am existing. Nobody has to tell me you are you. Or you should tell yourself as I. This need not be taught to anybody. Not even to an ant. From an ant to an elephant to whatever. It knows by itself. So that jnana also is one of the meanings of Veda. Veda is existence, Veda is knowledge. That is also contemplation, vichara, thinking. You just are alone, but you are not inactive. Physically, if you are inactive also, mentally it is not possible to be inactive. That is why Panini said every living being, every moment has an experience. Favorable, unfavorable, good, bad, whatever, but it will still have an experience nevertheless every moment of its life. It expresses, doesn't express, even in dream state, even in deep sleep, this exists. Different levels, different ways, whether you can recall or not, that's a different thing. It does exist. Veda is something that exists, that is knowledge, that is contemplating or about knowing itself or thinking around, vichara. See, Vida vichare is one dhatu from which Veda can come. Another last one is Vida labhe, something that you attain, something that you achieve. Also from the Vida dhatu Veda can come. Veda makes your existence known, contemplated, and attain or use it for something that is for good. This entire thing is in a single package, this single word Veda covers that. Of course, Veda word itself has 2 different accents, it has 2 different meanings. To refer to the sound which is causal, it has a different intonation. Another word, another accent, it can have there are 2 vowels. 2 vowels or 2 different accents are possible. Then the other accent means a set of darbha grass, that is also called Veda, but then that has a different swara. Panini has given rule even for that. Veda is a karane, and Veda of course has a source of knowledge. It's a cosmic sound, as I said, it's breath emanating from Sriman Narayana or Brahman, the ultimate. And it is in his praise. It actually sings the infinite nature of him, his compassion, his knowledge, his grace, his blessing, his concern for all the beings. So this is something that the entire infinite set of sounds they describe. So divine speech, we make this as now divine simply because it can create even the worlds. It can create deities. Brahma is created using the utterance of the Vedic sound. And so deities can come from some cause that has to be divine. So sound, Daivi, Vak, this is the word Maharshi is used. So it becomes Daivi simply because it can hold in it the entire things that are good for the humankind. By corollary, it can also have things that are against, but then it should have self-correcting way to bring it back. So this is something, speech that is divine is Vedana. Another way of expressing this. This is to enjoy the auspicious qualities of Brahman, you need this as the ultimate. I can compose this sloka. It may have faults. Kalidasa does, there are Mahakavis, there are Maharishis, Tanakadis, etc. There is a gradation, there is a different level, different people can express appropriately their feelings. No one can match the description given by the Vedas, because this is a different world by itself. That is something natural, that is something eternal. Anything that is created, artificial, practice, no issues. It can come as close to that as possible. Still, this is different from the rest. It's a different pedestal. So all the Vedas entirely describe the Parabrahma. Vedaishta sarvaihi ahameva vedyaha. Bhagavad Gita has asserted. And of course, it is generally an instrument of knowledge. Veda tells us a lot of things. If somebody is feeling cold, shivering, then one can create some fireplace and go near the fireplace to get relieved of the shivering cold. This, by experience, most people know. Veda also says this. Then where is the need for Vedas to say the medicine or antidote for cold is fire? There is a statement. But then, should Veda say this? This is evident. Every person knows and uses that. But when Veda says this, which is already known to somebody, then the role of Veda in that sentence is there are different capacities, different properties for different elements. This is built in, is what the Vedas say. There are two different elements. One makes you shiver, the other one can make you cured of that. Both these have their respective properties given by, if Veda says something which is also known, there is an unknown element that where did it emanate or where did it come from? Which is the cause of this. See, you don't have to know the cause to use something. A simple example, if a person eats, he doesn't have to know the digestive system to understand how what he eats gets digested and how his hunger gets removed. You don't need to. Something goes wrong, then someone like a doctor will have to know, and you approach him is good enough. Even then you don't have to know it yourself. But the knowledge at times is needed, but at times it is not needed. So this distinction comes from, as an instrument of knowledge, Vedas can elevate a person, can make him evolve to get rid of the bondage. This is possible. So, Veda Vidya, Sa Vidyaya Vimuktaye, that which liberates you is the true Vidya. Veda Vidya is the true Vidya. All Vidyas in the Indian system, in the Indian civilization, in the Sanatana Dharma, is called as a Vidyasthana. Every subject or a discipline is called a Vidyasthana. All Vidyasthanas are based on Vedas. There are 14 Vidyasthanas, 4 Vedas, then there are 6 Angas, and then 4 Upangas, etc. So this can elevate, liberate. And of course, there is a kind of story. There are a number of episodes, stories in the Vedas to explain to us. Anyway, I'll just try to run through. If we are having time, then maybe I can go into those stories. And it helps us achieve not only liberation. You can very much be in the material world, You can go after luxuries, nothing wrong. But if you do it with the guidance of Vedas, someday it will also lead you to liberation. If left to yourself, on your own choice you do something, you may not be able to reach the ultimate. This is the only difference. So, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, these are objects of desire, called generally as purushartha. Veda is meant for all the four. But the ultimate, if somebody wants to get, the rest of them will also be incidentally there. But then you will not stop at that stage. You would still like to continue till you are not back into the cycle of birth. Of course, as this is a technical way, as a pramana, then there is something that is direct perception. We call it as pratyaksha. Through your sense organs and faculties, you get to know. There you know sound, touch, form, taste and smell. This panchaguna through the elements. That is pratyaksha, that is direct perception. People are able to see, know, hear, smell, etc. Beyond this, there are certain things which will require a lot of observation and then reasoning into them, inferring from known things. That is, when you see a banyan tree, you will be able to infer that it has got a root, even though you do not see the root directly. And you should not be foolish to dig out to see the root so that the tree gets destroyed. That should not happen. So in that sense, what would happen is, today you can start creating. You can put in a seed grow, and then assume the same thing would have been there in the other case. So inference is another source of getting knowledge. Direct sensory perception, inference. Beyond these two, if something cannot be seen by these two, then you need Vedas or Shabda in general. For example, somebody says, I am hungry. Then if you want to tell him, you are not hungry, he will object to you. How do you know I am not hungry? I am saying I am hungry, so it is it. I am not seeing your hunger. See, this is not a valid argument. Simply because hunger cannot be seen. But it does not mean it doesn't exist. Also, it does not mean that it cannot go away. Hunger comes, it doesn't come forever. So there are ways of clearing it off. So how are these things known? That is when we get to the third pramana. See, 25% only of all worldly phenomena can be subject to either direct sensory perception or inference. The other 75% is beyond these two means of knowing something. You need someone with a special ability who has seen. It can be seen by different kind of people. But yoga is that kind of activity that Vedas say can help you see things which are generally unseen by others. Unseen by ordinary people, can be seen by special people. Or ordinary person can become special provided he follows the rigorous regimen of practice and trying to see that. But that's a difficult thing. It's against the current of the nature. It's always difficult choice to be made deliberately, to desist from something and to choose something. The option exists and possibility exists. Then, pratyakshena animityava, either through direct perception or through inference, whatever cannot be known, that is known through a source of knowledge, that is Veda. That is what is called Vedasya Vedata. What is the Vedaness of Veda is something that tells you which is not known by other sources, other avenues of knowledge. This is supreme in its own way. This is 3 times bigger than all others put together. Purusha Sukta says the entire world that can be known independently is only 1/4, and the other 3/4 is not through that means. One has to go through Vedas for that. So, and of course, Vedoksharo Dharma Moolam, it is the root of all dharma, all attributes of the entire things on the universe. It's all held by Veda as its injunction. It doesn't come out, it's not visible, it doesn't speak to you, it doesn't stop you. It is effective. I just mentioned efficacious sound pattern. You are saying there is no God. Maybe you don't remain the next moment. There it ends. So no more argument, no more discussion. But that which exists never comes and says, I am here, I am controlling everything. This is the greatness. Something that is true does not need propaganda, does not need any kind of advertisement. It exists, there it ends. Veda, we said the first root is existence is the root of Veda. Veda Sattaya. Exists, it exists. Who should it go and prove to? Who is anybody to prove it to? So that is the supremeness, the ultimate pramana. Okay. So Vedanta declares Shabda as an independent pramana. In fact, the only pramana and entities that are not accessible to senses or inference. So Brahma Sutras have the third sutra. Vyasa declares Brahman can be known, but known only through Vedas, no other way. And Vedas, the way it teaches, it has its own special, unique way. And that is and it requires a lot of practice, it requires a guru, it requires a lot of grace, all that. But it's not impossible. But it is possible only through a disciplined, structured way. Just like that, it is not possible. You cannot choose how it should be. But once you are chosen, yes, it gets revealed to you, you know. And yoga is the only way. In fact, Vedas begin also with first, even the Lord, for creating the world, He willed that let there be multitude of universes, worlds, etc. That will does not exist, then things don't exist. It's like a silent ocean, no waves in it. The moment there is a small disturbance, it just keeps on propagating and then it takes a very long time to again come back to that. So the Srishti or Pralaya does not take any extra effort, but for a will. But that will comes from the divine source. That could be known. We could even, by practice, by yoga. So, mind, intellect, etc. can be put under regimen control. So, I'm sorry, I'm just wanting to be reminded in case, it's getting delayed. We can stop any point, there's no issue. Yeah, I'm just keeping the Sanskrit slogas, that does not mean anything.
Maybe some questions.
That's fine. Put in. Yes. Yeah.
How would you say that Sankhya fits into the philosophy of Vishishtaadvaita?
Sankhya is not fully in tune with the Vedas. There are parts that are in tune with the Vedas. There are parts which are not. Sankhya itself has got two types. Prakriti and Purusha is accepted across Sankhya. Ishvara also is accepted in a kind of Sankhya. Ishvara also is accepted in a branch of Sankhya. There is a variety of Sankhya. In Brahma Sutras, there are many discussions where the prima facie view comes from the Sankhya's. And the refutation is from the Vedantic side. Vyasa, of course, Vyasa knows all the systems. He is a Sarvajna. There is no problem. And he is kind to everybody. He just tries to look at the good wherever, whatever exists. But then finally, Sankhya has one problem if Ishvara is not accepted. That is one issue. If Ishvara is not accepted, there is a Nirishvara Sankhya. In the Nirishvara Sankhya, the difficulty happens about Prakriti's initiation. Prakriti does everything, is fine. Prakriti is the substrate of action. There is no problem on that. But the action to be initiated, the will is needed. Prakriti is not sentient. In Sankhya, it's true of everybody. Not that Sankhyas are wrong in that count, but then once it is non-sentient. But if you say that creates everything, in Sankhya philosophy, Prakriti creates everything. Prakriti undergoes all the evolution. And they have a good reason to say, Purusha will never undergo change. So how will there will be change other than in Prakriti? This is fine. But they have an example, the parable of a blind person and a lame person. They give this example. There are two people, one is blind, the other one is lame. Both want to go to a place. Now what the Sankhya says is, this blind person can carry the lame person on his shoulders. The blind person can walk, he has no problem. He has his feet strong and capable. But he cannot see the route. He cannot see where he is, where he should go. The lame person can see, he knows, but he cannot walk. This is the problem. Combine the two. This lame person sits over the shoulder of the blind person. He guides him where to go, which way to go farther, go right, go left, etc. He can see but he cannot go. Now together they can achieve both people's purpose. This is fine. Now similarly they say Prakriti is the blind in the whole in the episode, and Purusha is Nishkriya. He is disinterested. He doesn't have to do anything. So he is just inert. But by his presence, he can make Prakriti act. This is what is the Sankhya philosophy. So far, so good. Now the issue is go to the details, nitty-gritty. How can there be a lame and blind person? What is distinction between them? Purusha is same in both cases. Why did somebody become blind? Or why did somebody become lame? Is it by his own choice? Or is he helpless? Vyasa asked this question. This is fine if it is given. There is a lame person, there is a blind person, so both their activities have to be done. Yes, this is the solution. Given a problem, we give a solution is good enough. Problem is the problem for the problem itself. Why did it come in the first place? Then it's not by one's own choice. If it is by one's own choice, one would not choose a negative effect at all in the world. Sukhaikatanam janayet. The entire world would be only happy if each one had one's own independence, a free will that can achieve anything. Then nobody would be grieving. There would be no sorrow at all in the world. Sankhyas do admit there is a sorrow. Janana, Marana, Karananam, Pratiniyamat, Ayugapat, Pravrittescha. Why we should accept there are multiple Atmas? It's simply because the time a person is born, same moment someone is died. A moment somebody is rich, same moment somebody is very poor. A moment somebody is foolish, the other person is wise, etc. Same time we find multiple people, it can't be the same person among all of them. So Purusha Bahutvam Siddham. Now Purusha Bahutvam Siddham when the Sankhya's have accepted, that is fine. That reasoning we do not find fault. Reason behind the difference, that is the question. Is it self-set or is it beyond you? Do you throw up your hands? That is where Vedas always say a person becomes what he does. Based on one's actions, one gets the result. So the actions are different, can be easily inferred if the results are different. That is fine. Now who controls for what action, what result? Which is favorable, which is not favorable? Is it possible to have any one of them, even including Kapila, let us say, sage Kapila who wrote the Sankhya Sutra, can he will differently for different people? Or Sankhya also, Kapila also requires some other agency. Then what happens? So Sankhya themselves came up with the need for Ishvara for the situation that somebody is Siddha, somebody is Baddha. Then how is this distinction? How does the Baddha become Siddha? This is the question. So, as far as the Prakriti becoming Mahat, Ahankara, Tanmatras, Bhutas, Indriyas, etc., we fully accept. Sankhya is taken by every system. There is no problem on it. Prakriti, its evolutes 24 tattvas is perfectly fine. Purusha as the 25th is fine, no issue. We need a 26th. Upanishads say there is a 26th tattva and that is Paramatma. If you do not accept that, then there will be difficulty. You cannot explain difference. This is the whole question. See, the entire world is bunkam when they say equality is the truth. No. Natural is difference alone. Difference is natural. You cannot equate two things at all. Any amount of legislation does not help you. Law will not make two things, horse and donkey cannot become equal because there is a rule, okay, they should be treated similarly. That's a different story. It does not help you because you don't have it within your powers. Who creates those different forms, different abilities? We have not created. Tell me tomorrow, okay, I want to have a new species. You design a new species, even with artificial intelligence, whatever someone wants to do. Okay, we create some monster which you do not know a priori what it is like. You will be the first person who are most worried about what would happen. We don't know. So it's not so much hopeless also. At the same time, the only source of such kind of discussion is Vedas. And Vedas have said, there is an evolution, there is a path, but it is all controlled by one single animate ability, animate entity, which is fair to everybody. See, this is possible. You can have somebody fair to all, not equal, equal results. Equal grace is possible. See, what happens is the teacher teaches similar way, same lesson to, let us say, all the 10 students in a class. Not all of them receive the same way. It's not because he delivered the different way. This is not true. The delivery is the same, the source is the same, but the reception is different. It's simply, that's why Sankhyas are right in saying these Mahat, Ahankara, Indriyas, they have their own way, their own effect, there's no doubt. The difference, the change, every moment it is changing. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, always alternating. Why is not answered. What is answered? Sankhya is very good in explaining what the phenomena is. Why is beyond Sankhya. If they only try to say Prakriti and Purusha are sufficient. That's what Vedanta points out. That's what Vyasa comes up with saying. He says Kapila is an avatar of Lord Vishnu, there's no problem. Kapila is Vasudeva. Buddha is the Lord's incarnation, there's no problem for us. But the issue happens to be, for different purposes, at different contexts, different things have been said. Veda will not do that. That is why initially I said something that is blind to all, let us say. Good enough, it doesn't look at who it is. Just dispense, okay, do's, don'ts. If do's are followed, this is the reward. If don'ts are done, this is the punishment, whatever. And there are ways, across the board, something can be changed. That is also possible, but not individually. Sankhya has the difficulty at that point to explain the difference. Then, of course, there are Seshwara Sankhya who accepted Ishvara. Then, of course, the Upadana becomes an issue. They still would like to be having Prakriti as the Upadana and Ishvara only as Nimitta, which also is not accepted in the Vedanta. Both Upadana and Nimitta is Brahman as per Vedanta. But that has its own reason. See, simply because when a second thing does not exist, you cannot have one more agency coming in to help. This is also true that in the Mahapralaya, when the entire world is dissolved, there is a single thing, Ekastishati Vishwatma Satu Narayana Prabhu. Then you have a single person who has to then create the rest of them. What happens to them? They don't get destroyed, they change the state. That part is accepted even by Sankhya, we accept it. The Satkaryavada is fine. Something new cannot ever come. It can only change states. True, it changed into dissolved state, it comes up into evolved state, that is possible. Who is the agent? That is the fundamental question. That agent remains to be Upanishada Parabrahma. Upanishads, whomever call them as Parabrahma. And that is okay, Krishna. That is fine. Krishna, Rama, kind of various reincarnations, that is fine. There are different reasons, different contexts for which there is a deviation from what the Vedas have said. That is possible. He has also had, Rama had, Krishna had moments of joy and moments of sorrow. This is to say, this is how the system works. And then he demonstrates that. Beyond that, in principle, there has to be three tattvas. An achetana tattva is needed, Prakriti. A chetana tattva is needed, Purusha, yes. A third Ishvara tattva is also necessary. That is what is Vishnu. It's not any concoction. This is just the proper sequential interpretation of all the Upanishad Vakyas taken together and not in isolation. You take some, you leave something, you can't have choice, you can't have preference, you can't have subjectivity to what you take as the base. Does it answer your question?